first disruption is to actually invite all of you after a long day of the office and tax you with speeches. That's the first disruption before you have dinner on a Diwali sort of pre-eves, you know. I'll try and keep it sweet and short as much as I can, just as Professor Manoj Pant did. Let's just do a little stock take on where we are, as we normally do in a company, but as humanity itself, sometimes we miss the larger picture when we start looking at smaller slices of life, which is dished out to us by newspapers and economists, and sorry to say that, but politicians and commentators. If you look at the post-war period, of course I wasn't born at that point in time, my dad was there perhaps. 70 years if you take stock of it, where have we ended up as a global economy? What disruptions has it caused? The good side of it is, all that you see today as development, as proof of development, the improvement of quality of life, education, wealth, all of that we've created has been largely out of the last maybe 30 years of the last 70 years. Fantastic. But we've got some things really, really bad. We got it mixed up. I'm sure students would know, but I believe the global population is somewhere around 7.1 billion people today. That's good. Longevity has increased, lifespans have increased. Very positive. Healthcare has improved. But 70% of the 7 billion people around the world live with an existence of less than $10 a day. 40% of the world's population lives less than $2 a day. That's even worse. 1 out of 7 people, which is about 1 billion people, don't have access to basic drinking water, electricity, education, healthcare. Children who are out of schools or not having access to education is 800 million people. I'm giving data which are global organizations which have published this. While we sit in this beautiful city of Singapore, sometimes we wonder, we are so privileged to where we are that we often forget and we complain about small things like the traffic in Singapore is becoming tough. I mean, I tell you, it's a joke. We're not living in the real world. How many people don't have nationality? People come and ask me, when am I going to get my PR or citizenship? I said, please go and look at people who have no nationality at all. Do you know how many people have no nationality in the world? More than the population of Singapore. 22 million people have no nationality. How many people are refugees in the world? UN Refugees Report talks about 66.7 million people today are refugees in the world, don't have a home to call themselves. Perhaps another 200,000 have got added in the last couple of weeks from Myanmar. We live in a very fractious world. We live in a very difficult world. We live in a world which has fundamentally lost its ability to lead with compassion. I've been hearing some political leaders, and I was very inspired when I heard this. He says today's politicians, we lack heroes. We don't have a Abraham Lincoln. We don't have a Mahatma Gandhi. What's happened? Where have we lost our way? Well, let me park it there and come to the world of business. So if you look at the past, we've got some things good, some things bad, some things really terrible. Where do we go from here? Coming to a group which will talk about business, international business. Singapore is an international business center, does everything that business can achieve. The world, as you know, every day we read about multilateralism coming to an end. It's all a period of bilateralism. And some who say it's become unilateralism because there's only one person or two people. And then the two unilateral people are kindergarten children who are threatening each other that they're going to throw bombs at each other. In between, if it lands in our lap, we're finished. So this is the first kind of disruption that's happening. So on political part of disruptions, you may want to think, why is it happening? A political disruption is happening because we got our first mathematic wrong. Very often people say Trump has come and trumped the world. But why did he come? It was evident. Because the bottom of the pyramid has sort of thrown its weight against the top of the pyramid. When I gave you the statistic of the numbers of people who are poor, 40% of the global wealth is concentrated in 2016 report said 88 individuals, whereas in 2015 it was 350, and the writer writes about it and says that in 2015 you needed actually an Airbus to take. In fact, now we can take them in a private jet, and 40% of the wealth can be distilled out if you can get hold of these guys. So I think we got all this thing wrong. At the same time, let me come back to the subject of what are the kind of disruptions. I can go on about technological disruptions which are affecting economic disruptions, but since it's primarily, having been a student of IIFT, I'll remain today loyal to my profession of being a trade guy, and I'll talk only about the subject of trade and not take disruptions which are happening in society and how people are breaking up and how families are getting into trouble, including in Singapore and so on. So in terms of trade, 2 or 3 very major trend lines which we may be aware, conscious or unconscious. Technology has crept in everywhere. See, the fundamental thing about trade was actually agglomeration and disagglomeration. You buy large and sell small, or you buy small and sell large. This is supply chain management fundamentally put together, and that's what you call international trading about. And the second disintermediation or intermediation was you never knew the buyer, you never knew the seller, and therefore you needed a trust, you needed an arbitrator, and therefore the trade happened. Many of these being questioned today, very fundamentally. Let me give you some examples. I don't know how many of you have apps which you buy products at home, which come home delivered in your post box. And if you look at e-commerce engines and all of that you talk about, but if you come down to it, I downloaded last year an app called AliExpress. I don't know how many of you do. I don't work with them, so I don't want to promote it. But it's an interesting app worth trying, and I bought 84 items on it. Typically $1, $2, so I don't think I spent a huge amount of money, but everything lands just for the experience of what is done. If you want to buy an iPhone charger wire today, you got several options. You can buy it at $28.50 in an iPhone shop. You can buy it in a small shop in Singapore for $9, $5, $3. If you go to AliExpress, he says it's $1.28 delivered to your home. And he says if you buy 10, I'll give you $10, pack of 10. So you can keep losing it, you can give it to your neighbors also for your price. And then he says I'm an OEM. On top of it, you try and order that. You get a tracker, and on your account it tells you when it has left the warehouse, whether the airline has picked it up, not picked it up, dropped it, not dropped it, and it also tells you an alert that tomorrow this will be delivered in your post box. What price? $1.28. Does the damn thing work? It certainly works. It worked for me for 6 months. But I think if I want to buy 10, it's okay. But what I'm trying to prove at $1.28, the kind of value engineering that's gone behind it, the kind of supply chain engine that's gone over it, that's where the disruption is coming today. Now let's superimpose this to the other thing. When we were in IIFT, we used to spend a lot of time learning how to fill the blue form and the green form. One was the bill of entry, the other was the shipping bill. I don't know if they still exist in India or not, but one was green and one was blue, if I remember. Or red. One was red and one was green. Yeah. Red for imports, so don't import. Only export green, but then you used to have more of the other. Today, you don't have any of that form, nothing of that kind, and there's nothing called customs duty. Customs duty in India had the highest innovation, duty upon duty upon duty upon duty, minus duty plus duty and multiplication. No one, God never knew what exactly would be the duty. On top of it, you could have classified a donkey as an elephant and an elephant as a mouse, and get it out, because the duty on the mouse is lower than the elephant. It's only a question of proving. I'm talking about my era, so I'm going a little old. So I'm going to be boring with that. But today the days have come where you order online and a product comes to your home. Do you know that in Singapore is a free port? You can bring a product here without any duty. Only up to, guess how much?
$400. $400.
$150. That's right, $400, yes. Some countries have $200, some countries have $100. So what happens is when you disagglomerate, and imagine that this hall today, all of us are importing $200 worth of the same item from one particular engine. And it's all coming to your home and being delivered. You pay no duty. So what's happened? Regulation is running behind, disruption is running ahead. Do you understand what is the size of the e-commerce engine today? A study done about 3 months ago said it is 600 million as of 2015. And 17 and 18 they're saying it's going to, 600 billion is going to be touching $1 trillion in 2018. If you got $1 trillion on which, let's say, large part of the $1 trillion is disintermediated in a manner, the consumers are directly consuming it. Where is the world going on which you're not able to tax, you're not able to collect customs duty? You've completely disrupted the whole system of trade actually. Now let me put some more technology on it and give you a very interesting worldview. I'd seen IoT Center, I think someone's going to speak about it, and I saw the demonstration of how they give you a mobile phone in your hand. I think all of you should go so they can host you sometime. I suppose I can invite them on your behalf. It is EDB, you want to see how the world is in the future. EDB has built it with IoT Center, Accenture here, where they show how the future of the world is going to work. So when you enter there, they give you a mobile phone. And with that mobile phone, you can control a petrochemical complex which is physically running in Australia, near Sydney. And I saw that, I don't know, maybe you changed it. But they say, now come on, press this and you can open the valve and you will close the valve. So you've got internet connectivity, IoT. The factories are going to be run by robots. We all have already agreed that all robots will be coming, and perhaps robots will not have a race and religion, thankfully, so that it will be more peaceful for factories to run with robots. We don't know, maybe they'll get unionized and come back at us. But the next stage, they'll all be so automated that the logistics value chain, which is already fairly automated, will take over. We should also have robots, we'll have intelligence engines, it'll have artificial intelligence, so it gets shipped. Now let me talk a little bit about shipping. Every ship needs anywhere about 25 to 50 crew, which runs the ships. The ships of the future perhaps won't need any fuel at all. They're talking about solar, and it doesn't need any crew. It'll be digital ships, remotely managed. You sit on a table, and eventually it'll come down to a mobile phone. And you say, ship now, get into the Pacific Ocean, take this journey, come here and deliver, and it comes to Singapore, port calls here, and then you're already here. You should go to the port of Singapore if you've been and see how much of automation has taken place here. Hardly there are people who are moving the boxes, so eventually the boxes will move. And then the postal systems will go and have these little, what do you call them, the ones which go in the air and then drones, sorry, I lost the word. Drones, yeah. So it'll upload in a drone, and Singapore Post will bring you, here is your $1.28 charger coming home and dropping it through the window. Fantastic. So what is left for mankind to do? Just consume. Because the brain is shifted to the thumb. Everything you can perhaps control. With the factory you're going to control on your thumb, on a mobile phone, and perhaps the banking engine I didn't tell you, because you already have PayLah in Singapore, and you've got more than PayLah in India, and all payments can be the most easy thing in the world today to do is make a payment. Collection is still a problem. Nobody has found a solution for collection. Everybody says payment solution, but collection solution. So this is the disruption that world has got it wrong somewhere. So the payment solutions are fantastic. So with that, just think about it. We would have nothing to do, right? How do you earn? And as economists would say, you don't get consumption without production. So one feeds into the other loop. But I'm really worried how the future of this loop will work if you don't have a purpose. I stated up front, it is not to make a political statement, but if we have to lift ourselves into something which will sustain the next few generations, it's not just technology. I had a slide which I didn't put on the slides because there are some interesting slides. You don't have to study trade theory, you just have to see a picture of the world from a satellite at night. It shows where the lights are, where the development is. And it's nights and days which are all superimposed and beautifully done. You would see swathes and swathes of areas in the world which are completely dark. Those dark places are there in India, those dark places are there in Africa, they're there in Asia, they're all over, right? So friends, I think the task is, disruption is great, but disruptions are of two kinds. Disruption, it actually rhymes. Disruption for destruction and disruption for construction and development. So I think the shift that we need to do is bringing purpose in our businesses, in our lives, to see how we can make a difference to those for whom this has not made any difference at all so far. Otherwise, we will have this 88 people problem, which will run down to 50 people, and you'll have some rockets flying on our head and we'll just land on our heads. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.